to deal with. Jimmy was very professional and super easy to deal with. He answered all of our questions promptly and accurately. I would recommend Jimmy to anyone I know. Michael from West Virginia, everyone was professional and made the whole process easy. The entire process took a month, and every step of the way, someone was available when I had questions. Just an awesome company. Thomas from Tennessee, Derek was great to work with and made the experience easy and always reliable, always available to answer questions. Neil from Florida, fast, friendly, knowledgeable. Randall from Ohio, awesome right from the start. Being out of state was no issue. Stephen from Ohio, simple, fast, no issues, and blew my previous mortgage company out of the water with great customer service and were always quick to get back to me whenever I had questions. Robert from Indiana, easy to keep in contact. I was able to use email and text messages for most of the deal, which made this very easy to get done. 5 stars. John from Ohio, I loved the texting and easy communication from this mortgage team. Closing was simple and awesome as well. Brendan from Arizona gave us 5 stars and said great communication, great response times, just an overall great experience. Austin from Florida says, huge listener of Conrad's podcast and everything he says is true. He can help you save money and take years off of your loan. Jimmy was great to work with, amazingly painless experience compared to others I've had. Thank you very much. And no, I should be thanking you guys. First of all, thanks for listening to the podcast. And second, thanks for trusting me enough to have a shot at saving you some money. But most of all, thank you for your business, and I hope you enjoy all of the savings that we provided for your family. But if you're listening to this and you haven't gone to savewithconrad.com yet, what are you waiting for? We're licensed in more than 40 states. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket. And if we can't help you save money, we won't waste your time. But if you've got a 30-year loan, if you've got a second mortgage, if you've got credit card debt, you're overpaying your single biggest bill, and you may not realize it. We're going to show you how to get the best interest rate possible and skip a couple of house payments, but in the process, you're going to save hundreds of dollars per month, and more importantly, pay your house off faster with cheaper monthly payments. If you're serious about keeping more of your own money and getting out of debt faster, retiring on time, and eliminating your credit card debt, you should hurry to savewithconrad.com. Find out how much money you can save for free right now. NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com. Well, not too terribly long after he gets up and going here in his run with the tag titles, eventually the company sort of switches gears on him. It's no longer Mid-South. Now it's the Universal Wrestling Federation. This is Bill Watts' attempt to sort of go national. What do you think of the name change from Mid-South to UWF?
I was involved in a lot of conversations about that. And, you know, the key word was universal, because there was the World Wrestling Federation. There was World Championship Wrestling, the show that Watts used to book in Atlanta when he was wrestling there. So the key words, what do we use that separates us from the word world? And we came up with universe. And I'm not positive, but I think Bill's wife at that time, Enna, I think she had something to say about, not something to say, but to contribute to that deal. So Universal became our buzzword, and then the rest of it was just easy. Universal Wrestling Federation, the UWF, it kind of had a little ring to it, but we had to do something to get away. We wanted to attract national sponsors. Our syndicated television ratings were off the board. We were the number 1 syndicated television show in the United States for a long time. And that includes Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, which was on the air at that time, if I'm not mistaken. So number 1 in syndication was great. We were on all network affiliates to that whole region of the country, our major independent stations like WGNO in New Orleans at that time, Indy. So anyway, it was interesting development there to try to compete. And we thought our brand was pretty damn good. We'd gone on TBS before that as Mid-South Wrestling, playing a week-old syndicated show that had only been aired in our area, our geographical area. So for the vast majority of the audience, these shows, even though they had already aired in a territory a week earlier, was new material. And as you and I both know, based on the TV ratings, it was amazingly popular. I think it averaged a 5 rating or something like that, which was very, very good. And Ted Turner liked to work with Cowboy. They'd been buddies for a long time, Hellraisers and all that good stuff. So, but then Ted broke his word, and through the McMahon deal, and we were off. But it showed us that there was an appeal for our product nationally, and that was one of the reasons that we wanted to get out of, wanted to expand, because it's like having a diversified portfolio. You got all your eggs in one basket. Sometimes it's not a productive scenario. And so by having a national brand and getting our TV shows in a lot of different markets, we believe that we could come in there in time and compete, because the Mid-South area, because of the economy and the oil and the natural gas going to hell, people did not have a lot of money, just disposable income to buy tickets. Ironically, at the same time, our TV ratings had never been better. And so that would be a concern. People couldn't afford to go to the live events, but they sure as hell still watch the television, which is amazing to me that some wrestling shows are on the downtrend in a time where there's more people watching television. It's it's ironic. It's a cruel irony. But the UWF was an interesting idea. It expanded our syndication to 120-something stations nationally, and it also gave us a property that we didn't discuss a lot or at all. It gave us a property that we could sell if necessary, and that's what we ended up doing. Obviously, as we'll talk about. But UWF was a decent idea. The universal was the key term on the brainstorming sessions. How do we differentiate for using the word world? And we found it through the universe, so to speak.
In April of '86, he's going to team up with Terry Taylor to compete in the first Jim Crockett Sr. Memorial Cup. The Crockett Cup has become almost a legendary tag team tournament. Ultimately, in the quarterfinals, they go to a time limit draw with Ivan and Nikita Koloff, thus eliminating both teams. What are your memories of the first Crockett Cup?
I loved it. I remember a couple of interesting stories. I went down there and did a big media blitz with Dusty and Baby Doll. And with all of our media contacts in New Orleans, we got Dusty. Not that it was a hard chore, but we got him all over town. We got him in TV, radio, newspaper, the whole 9 yards. So I remember that. Been a great media tour, and Dusty was very impressed. I think that helped solidify our relationship, because I had it highly organized. I mean, literally down to the half hour, maybe even more extreme than that. The second thing I remember is in a production meeting that the position of ring announcer came up. And I'll always appreciate Jimmy Crockett for this. And Cowboy said, well, why don't we just have your guy and Jim do the ring announcing? And Jimmy Crockett says, well, I appreciate it. He said, my announcer doesn't do, my play-by-play announcer does not do ring announcing. It's not good for his image. It's not good for the position. Not going to happen. So then Bill, of course, being somewhat defiant and understanding Jimmy's logic, well, then my guy won't do it either. So I was tickled shitless. I didn't want to be the ring announcer for that show. It's going to, 3 or 4 hour show at least. And, brother's got to pee.
Right.
So that was one conversation. And I always found it amazing on how the show was booked. When you book a tournament, any tournament in pro wrestling, you start with the winner and work backwards to the first round. And you stair step them back. Then of course, it works going forward. You know who's going to win. You know what you want to do. Who you want to push. The push is important, Conrad. I'm telling you, the push, baby. So that was an interesting process. Listen to the finishes, and of course, a great example of that was the time limit draw. Funny how I was so adamant about having time limits in AEW, and kind of where my origins come from. It gives you another finish,
right?
And it doesn't destroy talents. Not that losing does, but losing the wrong ways doesn't do you any favors, and losing too much doesn't do you any favors. But going a time limit draw, that's kind of what raised the eyebrows on Darby Allin, because he won a 20-minute time limit draw with Cody months ago in their first outing. So that was interesting to see the creative and how that was done, and the time limit draw was utilized because that protected Crockett's team of Nikolai and Ivan. That's what we said, right? To Nikolai and Ivan, and it protected the UWF team as well. So they were eliminated. So now they're taken care of. They're addressed, and it's an interesting little wrinkle for the tournament. So I enjoyed that. I stayed at the Hyatt Regency across the way from the Superdome, and for many nights. Same place I stayed with Muhammad Ali when we did the Superdome show. So I was kind of familiar with that area. And I was in New Orleans every week, pretty much. So it became a second home in that regard. But it was an interesting experience. It was interesting to see how all the talent was wrangled and managed and placated and babysat and all those things, because, everybody's only concerned about the finish. I've always been more concerned about the performance overall than just the last 3 seconds. But the talent see it a whole different way. And so, but it was an interesting experience. I thought there was no way in hell that Cowboy, who was known to not play well with others at times, how this was going to work out, him being cooperative with Jimmy Crockett and Dusty. But Dusty and Cowboy got along so well. It was Bill that made Dusty a babyface in Florida, and the rest is history. So it was interesting, Conrad. I look back on those days very fondly. I met a lot of talents that I heretofore had either just met in passing or hadn't met at all. That was kind of cool. So it was a fun experience. And anytime you can spend multiple days in New Orleans, ain't a bad thing, except when it's raining. Not a good deal.
Let's keep it going here. I guess we should mention there's a pretty legendary story that while he's working with the UWF, Brad Armstrong is his opponent. He goes in for an elbow. Steve's going to duck it, but somehow Brad's elbow connects and busts him open bad. Steve has to get 108 stitches around his orbital socket, and he still wrestles the next night. And I think Brad was pretty nervous that Doc was going to kill him, but I guess eventually when they get together, he says, "Fuck it. It ain't ballet, brother." What do you remember about this horrific incident where we need 100+ stitches?
I was there, man. I was there, working behind a hot microphone, Conrad. Well, the spot it wasn't Brad Armstrong's fault. Doc was supposed to duck.
Right.
And he wasn't a good ducker. he kept churning along like a train, but he didn't duck low enough. And it caught the elbow, like a forearm shiver, caught Doc, the point of the elbow caught him right there in the eye. And man, it was gruesome. I mean, it was absolutely gruesome. You can imagine a wound requiring 100. This is no exaggeration, folks. It's not one of those wrestling deals where, well, it started out, he had 10 stitches and it went to 30. Then, he had 108 stitches. We took him to the hospital, I think Grizzly Smith may have taken him to the hospital, the lead agent. And they had to get an ophthalmologist, I think it was an ophthalmologist, to do the stitching because it was so tender and so sensitive around that eye. They wanted to protect his eye's vision. But they get 108 stitches. So he comes back, Doc comes back from the hospital. The eyes really eyes already swell shut. It's ugly as hell. But he'd been cleaned up from the blood, obviously, stitched up. And then he comes back, and me and Cowboy were talking about something after the taping. Here comes the Doc. And so Doc gives us the lowdown of what he just experienced at the hospital. And he said to Cowboy, I remember this like it was yesterday. He said, well, Bill, what do you want me to do? Of course, Cowboy says, what the fuck you mean, what I want you to do? I mean, about my bookings. I want you to make your goddamn booking, Steve. You're booked in Biloxi tomorrow night. And that's where you'll be, and that's where you're going to wrestle with 108 stitches. So in today's world, that would have been an issue.
Yeah.
To Doc, he just wanted to hear it from the boss that I'm going to Biloxi tomorrow. Because Doc also realized he might not have been a Mensa member or a CPA candidate, but he knew that if he didn't work, he didn't get paid. So the incentive to go to work, injured or not, was there, rightfully or wrongfully. And but he was really, I couldn't believe it. So I talked to Bill. I said, are you sure you want him to work? And then, the mat's dirty and you could get infected. And he said, well, we're going to have him bandaged up. We'll take care of him. But goddamn, the Cowboys say no deal. You know, kid, this ain't ballet.